Well, cheers.
Yeah, what are you eating right there?
I'm eating a little Maryland 4-point that's mixed into some chili.
Hey, you didn't have to say 4. I don't know why you got to bring it up like that. That's a little brutal. What about a Maryland pencil holder? You had something like that there. So I guess we've talked about this for a while, and we want to do some videos, put some stuff out there with some information. We don't really want to call it a podcast, right? Because I don't think it'll ever get on a podcast.
Maybe.
But
we'll see.
We'll post them to YouTube. We'll do some live on TikTok and see if we get any traction. But I guess my main reason for doing it is, I see a lot of people out there that post a lot of stuff about, man, I've been out hunting for 7 weeks straight and I haven't seen any deer. And meanwhile, we're seeing 25 deer every time we go out, putting ourselves in positions to be super successful. I mean, you've killed 6 this year. I killed 5 this year. And what's your number one reason to do it?
I got 2. You called me last night. You told me to think about it, so I got 2 reasons.
You thought about it?
I did.
Okay.
I did. I thought about it. The first is to tell a story, right? That's important to me. And I was making the fly fishing films long before we started any of this, and then when I had a chance to start telling the story with hunting, I was like, all right, yeah, let's do it. And hunting's just so much more exciting. Not that I don't like fly fishing, but and then I guess the other part is the mentorship aspect of it, right? Because I mean, so many guys. Like, I'm fortunate. I had you. I had Kevin, Tyler, Felix. Like,
Kevin helped you out? Like, really? All right. Well, okay.
We don't gotta throw shots that early, but for me to be successful this quickly is a direct reflection of the mentors that I've had, right? And so if people don't have that, then where do they go? Where do they even start? You know what I mean?
Quick? Like, does anybody understand how quick it is? This is literally your second year
bow hunting, and then the year before that was
you had a week worth of rifle hunting the year before that. I wouldn't even count
that. Was just like hey, I want to get back into hunting and start poking around in the woods. So,
but you did 2 years worth of archery hunting in the last 2 years. Last year, what did you shoot? Three deer last year?
Mm-hmm.
2 in Pennsylvania, 1 in Maryland.
Yeah.
You tried real hard to get out there and get a buck. It just didn't happen. I mean, we were close a lot of times, and
heartbreaking moments. Heartbreaking season.
Some big old mountain bucks, man, will pick you off, and it just makes a difference between having a great season and feeling a little bit empty-handed. But anyway, this year you went out, you smoked a giant 10-point, like 118-inch 10-point.
Yeah. That was early in the season too. That just sent my confidence through the roof.
And then you killed 5 does.
Yeah. You had a really good season. You started off really strong, and then kind of went into a little bit of a lull there. The October lull hit a little bit, didn't it? Nah, you were chasing some big bucks. You were in action all the time. We've seen more rutting action this year than I would say most people see in a lifetime. It's crazy.
Yeah, it was kind of slow at first. Like, it didn't seem like it wanted to happen. I think in Pennsylvania, as I lean back against the wall, I think the action doesn't start until really hot and heavy until about the 7th, 8th, 9th of November, and then kind of runs through the 20th or the 18th, 19th November. I think a lot of people, they think that, man, you get to Halloween kicks it off, and then boom, it's just crazy. I never saw a buck chasing a doe all year. And I've hunted probably 75 sits. I hunted every day of the rut up until, the 9th. I killed a buck in Maryland, right? 7th, I killed a buck in Pennsylvania. And then I hunted 2 or 3 days after that. But I never saw a buck chasing a doe. Not one time this year. I saw a lot of bucks cruising, but I never saw a buck chasing a doe. I think a lot of that happens, man. Pennsylvania, you can say what you want, but that second or third week in November is when it really gets super hot. I don't know, you saw it last year.
I saw it this year. Like every time I went down to Maryland, but like you said, that second week in November is just every time I went down after that, there were bucks chasing does, and it's terrible if you're trying to hunt it because you can't stop it. If that doe doesn't run them right past you, it's game over.
You don't like it at all. I mean,
I hate it. I can't stand it.
You don't like the rut. He doesn't like it. That's all right.
I'd rather get on them early season, but it is what it is. We're past that at this point. So let's moving forward, right? Let's talk about late season.
So yeah, where do we go from here, right? I've got two buck tags from Maryland, right? I could shoot unlimited does because we hunt a lot of that suburban area around Baltimore and basically straight south of where we're at here. You're doing the same thing. You've already killed a pile of does down there, but we got some trail camera footage. He's got a lot of work on the ground down there. He's out there hanging the trail cam. I'm lazy. I've been hanging out and just chilling, but I see some big bucks posted online where guys are kind of probably a little bit too, I don't know, they share too much information. They're telling people where these bucks are at. So I know they're moving. I think I'm going to go down tomorrow, and there's probably like 4 or 5 things that I really want to focus on in late season. You've probably got your own topics, but my number one thing for late season, I would consider this late season. It's not after Christmas, but rifle season's over. We're back into the bow hunting. We don't really rifle hunt, but if you're going to go out after late season deer with the bow, these are probably like my top 4 things. Number 1, you've got to hunt food right now. If you're after a buck, you've got to be on food, and you've got to be close enough to buck bedding to catch them when they're going to move out of that bedding during the day. And there's a lot of ways to find food. If I talk to some guys about what they're doing as far as scouting and how they're locating feeding areas, some of it I think they just make it too hard. I'll drive down the road, and if there's a cut cornfield and there's public property that I can hunt, I'm going to try to find a way, even if deer have to cross a road to get to that food, I'm going to target that area this time of year, because they're going to move. Bucks, they're not going to move super far. Does are just going to find the food and then bed real close to it. Bucks will bed, off of the does a couple hundred yards. And then I'm going to find the thickest, nastiest, highest stem count stuff I can find, and that's where I'm going to set up. And what's your number 1?
You're hitting the nail on the head there. The food, especially after the rut. We talk about this all the time. They've lost 20 to 30% of their body mass. The bucks need to put on the mass before winter hits, and that's what they're going to be doing.
Yeah, and I think we're not talking about standing oaks in the middle of a giant oak flat with 500 or 600 yards worth of open tall timber with no undergrowth. I don't think you're going to be successful there unless you're hunting at 2 in the morning, and I don't do that. So you need to find a spot that's got some really thick cover. If you can find places that have ditches or stream beds or something that a deer can move through where it feels kind of comfortable during the day for that last 10-15 minutes of daylight, because that's probably your window. This isn't Kansas. You're not going to see a deer in Pennsylvania or Maryland standing in the middle of a field at 3:30 in the afternoon. You'll see some does.
I was going to say though, that's
some does.
That's true.
And you
but
might
it's
see
weather dependent. And I saw a buck the other day at 4 o'clock. That's an hour and 20 minutes before. Going back 2 weeks here, but
it's a 1.5-year-old buck.
That's true. It's a young deer.
Buck.
You're right. I'd say that last 5 to 10 minutes is the best time, but. For people who are just trying to take a doe, and it doesn't have to be a buck. If they're just trying to take a doe, that 2 to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, especially on a bad weather day, man, that can be fire.
If it's foggy, if it's overcast, and it's been cool all day and moist, especially after a rainstorm. I'm excited for tomorrow because it's rained all day today. It's going to rain all night, and then 6 o'clock in the morning, 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, there should be a shift to snow or light flurries. Man, the deer love that. They love that change. They want to go out and frolic around in the snow. Yep. So my hopes are high for tomorrow. I think I know exactly where I'm going. I'm not going to share that with Alfred Peter because he'd probably beat me to it. Guy always steals my bucks.
I have to work tomorrow.
Yeah. All right, number 2. You're up first. What's your number 2? Late season stuff.
Number 2. Well, mine was going to be the time of day. You're getting back into that. You got to be concentrating on the last 10 minutes, for a buck especially, right? That last 10 minutes is when they're going to get up and move, and you got to start pushing that bedding as much as you can. So, you got to be dialed in on deer. But the other part to that, though, is some of these more mature bucks, you got to push that bedding.
Got to push it.
But some of those more mature bucks, if you can find a nice scrape outside of a bedding area, right? They're the ones that are still going to be chasing any does that come back into estrus for the 2nd or 3rd time. Are going to be the mature bucks. They're going to be chasing those does. They might come out and check a scrape right after they get out, and then they're heading to a food source. And I think that's probably not a bad way to set up if you're going to do it, and you can still find a scrape that's being worked. I mean, I know, I was just down in Maryland last week, and there's still a ton of scrapes being worked. And I think that's probably so dependent on your doe to buck ratio as well.
Oh, yeah. Has a lot to do with it. If you're in an area that's got 4 or 5 does per every buck, there's a lot of science that says there's a low likelihood that a doe will get bred or a doe won't get bred during that 2-week rut phase. It's just a matter of when that doe comes in. Some come in early October, some come in December. Any deer that was born earlier this year that gets to 65, 70 pounds worth of body weight, she could come into cycle in January whenever she reaches that body weight. For me though, I hunt some really peculiar places where there's 5 does for every buck, and I know that there's that many. And in that situation, I think a couple could get missed. I won't argue it, like science says, most of them get bred. So
let's talk about your trail camera footage. Just spin off for a second here, right? Like it's not a late winter tip, but let's spin off, right? Your trail camera footage from last year shows.
Can you go outside, buddy?
He just wants to say hi. It's all good.
Yeah.
But so you have definitive trail camera footage of bucks coming in February last year and still working some scrapes, right? And they're still holding their antlers.
Well, what I've done in the past 2 or 3 years is I've put a trail camera in a specific spot that I know was a super heavy rut spot, like 10 November through 20 November. And in those spots, it's super thick. There's a lot of cover. It's always mountain laurel and hemlocks. That's just where I find the spots. If I put in a mountain laurel patch that's a couple 100 yards wide, people aren't going to go in there. As soon as buck season starts, right around the day after Saturday after Thanksgiving, these deer seem to move in there. And by the 1st of December, it's just loaded with deer. And you talked about time of day. Landon, can you give us a minute, please? You talk about time of day. When they're in those patches and they feel secure in that cover, those deer will move all day long.
Yeah.
I'm talking all day long. And it doesn't matter as long as there's no pressure in there, because there's pressure everywhere else. I mean, the Orange Army's out there chasing them around. There's guns going off everywhere. And these deer are working scrapes at 10:30 in the morning, 2:30 in the afternoon, all day long.
Well, so then let's tie this back into the whole point of the episode, right? Late season hunting, right? So we've also talked about this before. How much do deer need to eat in order to just survive, like on a daily basis? We've talked about it's 8 to 12 pounds, right?
Yeah, but eat constantly. I mean, some guys say, it's 4 or 5 times a day, but I'll tell you what, I've sat in the woods, I've watched bedded does lay there, chew their cud, get up, walk around, and they're not going far. They're only going 10 or 15 yards from their bed. They're going to eat whatever acorns are there, they're going to browse on some stuff, and then they're going to go right back to that same bed. They're going to lay down, chew their cud for another half hour, maybe take a nap, whatever they do, then get up and do that again. I've watched a deer do that. I sat and watched a doe do it for 8 hours one time. There's no stopping. They're going to get up and move. It's not that they're nocturnal. They're not nocturnal at all. They're confined to a real small area when the pressure's tight,
Well, so that's the point I'm getting at, right? So if you can find these areas and you can go hunt them, and especially so one thing is I've noticed that the deer, as soon as it starts getting really cold, they need to keep eating. It almost seems like they're not beating you back to the bed in the morning. Early season, it seems like you can't beat a deer back to its bed.
I think early season, it's hard to beat a mature buck back to its bed. They're
right,
in bed
but
4:30 in the morning.
Late season, when they're forced to eat, it almost seems like they're getting back a little later, 7, 8 o'clock. It seems like they're just coming back later. And this is just stuff I notice when I'm driving to work, and I start seeing deer out in the morning when I never saw a deer out in the morning all season.
See a 150-inch deer standing in a field down there below the gym. Right.
Still cruising, December 17th, looking for does.
Absolutely. Last year we had a crazy hunt down in Maryland where, I think, what was it, 9 January?
Yeah.
We went down there on sort of a rainy, cold day. Again, there's a standing cornfield across the road. There's public land on the other side. We set up maybe 300 yards inside of that road, and it was like a train of deer coming from that cornfield down. And we didn't even get all the deer filtering past us. When we went out later that afternoon and we drove down the road, there was a mud trail across the road from all the deer coming down the bank and the mud coming off of their hooves by the time they hit the woods on the other side. We saw 20 deer that day, probably 18 deer, probably.
Yeah.
We spooked a bunch of deer out of there when we moved in the morning, and then we had a really nice buck come in. And, you know, unfortunately, no shot opportunities on him. I guess we just, you know, we got 2 guys in a tree, cameras everywhere. We just, in order to get set up to shoot that deer, I think we were facing the wrong way
Entirely.
and we didn't expect
Not to come from there. Not the one. Not what he was doing. He was following what looked like a fawn coming in.
Yeah, he was chasing a fawn around, and that's not
probably came into estrus late and just, you know. Yeah.
All right, so we talked time of day. We talked food.
Mm-hmm.
I guess my number 2 or my number 3 would probably be, you know, focus on the little stuff. All of these details that we work on to try to, I don't know, clean up our early season stuff, they're 10 times more important now. If you've got strings hanging off your bag, if you've got, you know, I'm a 1-stick guy, he's a 1-stick guy, so we've got a climbing rope. If we've got a climbing rope or we've got an aider on the bottom of our stick and it's hanging down off the tree and it's blowing in the wind, man, these mature 4 and 5-year-old does are going to pick you off like it's nobody's business. You don't have a chance. You don't have a chance at a big bruiser buck, 5, 6 years old, something like that. They're going to see every little bit of movement. They're going to pick you off. There's no foliage out there. So you got to worry about your camo. You got to worry about you know, what your background looks like. If I have an opportunity to set in a tree that has any sort of cover, I don't care what it is, if it's got cover. Hemlock trees are great. There's still some oak trees out there that are going to have leaves on. If I can get up 25, 27 feet into the canopy, and I don't even care anymore about limbs. Like, I'll worry about a shot when the shot opportunity comes. This time of year, if you don't worry about putting yourself in a position where you've got things blocking you and breaking you up, those deer are going to pick you off. I mean, I've already wiggled my bow out through limbs, and like the last one I shot, I know for a fact when that deer took that step forward and I moved to the left just a little bit, I put the bow up against a branch. You can hear it in the video. When I let that arrow go, you can hear the vibration of my limb hitting that, and I think that's why I'm a little bit left, and that's why, you know, ultimately I'm low. I made a bad shot, but we recovered the deer. But I'm pinching the bow up against limbs, all kinds of crazy stuff going on. But you've got to get dug into a tree and you got to sit still. I mean, that's just, it's more important now than ever is. When there's all kinds of foliage on the trees, you can have a deer walk 25 yards from you. You can hear them coming, and then all of a sudden they're underneath you, and you're 35 feet up. They're never going to see you because unless they look straight up at you, there's no way. They're not going to pick you off. But now, 150 yards away, if you're, you know, scratching your head or moving or adjusting your coat or whatever, they can see you at 150 yards before you see them. You've got to pay attention to all those small details.
Yeah, that was gonna be my next one. Stop moving, and then either climb higher or climb lower. You either got to get up high enough that you're out of their peripheral vision, or you got to stay low enough that you're blending in with something. And I've only gone like 8 feet up in a tree, right? And we talked about where that big buck we were talking about was cruising for does earlier, right? You have a patch of, I don't even know what it is. It's not mountain laurel. It's just that like 6 to 8 feet tall shrubs that just sits. You know what I mean?
I don't even know what that stuff is.
I mean, it's just super thick, and I climb high enough to just get my shoulders above it, and deer won't see you. But you can't be in that middle zone anymore. That 20 feet, unless you have superb cover right there, the deer are looking for you.
You've got to be in the limbs, yeah. What I like, you know, saddle hunt, 1-stick guy, I like to have a tree that comes up and Ys.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can have a straight portion of that Y that I can get in to where I'm up above that Y in the tree, well, now it looks like the tree branches into 3 different pieces. And it's a really, to me, I think it's the ultimate setup. Then I also have 2 pieces of you know, tree that I can set up behind, and I can kind of cover myself. And I love to face the direction that I think deer are coming from. It sets me up for a good strong side shot. Sometimes I get surprised I have deer coming in from behind me, but then, you know, the drop shot's pretty easy. And then sometimes I just get in a position where it's really tough to shoot a deer. We had one of those shots earlier this year on the first day where I'm waiting for deer to come past me because you're, another 30 or 40 yards up the hill from me, and I'm just waiting. And I had plenty of shot opportunities on, like really good shot opportunities. But then I'm so far twisted in the saddle as I'm drawing. I don't know. I'm getting to full draw, but I just don't have my knock points right. Everything was wrong. I shouldn't even have taken the shot, but luckily when I shot that arrow, I missed that deer probably 3 inches low, and then a couple seconds later, you drill one.
Yeah, unfortunately.
But anyway,
unfortunately,
those are the things I think you need to focus on. Late season. You got. I know you got some more.
More than that. So let's talk about like ground hunting, right? And this is something we don't do a lot, but I think if you are going to do it, late season has got to be one of the best times to do it. Just because you have so much more cover on the ground than you have, and there's so many places where I don't think it's even, I'm not gonna say it's not possible to kill a deer from a tree, right? But like, let's look down in Maryland where you have stuff that it must have been logged 10 years ago or whatever it is. There's no mature trees there, so everything you're climbing is a tree that's about that wide. It's just not. I just really think that hunting from the ground sometimes is just ideal. But you and I we've talked this so many times. Hunting from the ground is great if you know when you can get away with certain things. Although for a beginner, it's probably worse. You're probably better off. Like we always go 30 to 40 feet up in a tree, and I know that sounds absolutely crazy, but it's just not.
There's a million people that tell you don't go that high. There's all kinds of people. They shoot a lot of deer. They'll say, "Hey, man, 20 feet, 22 feet, that's the magic number because it'll give you the best angle." Now,
we don't get good
understand this. We do not get good shots. Never. I've shot a lot of my deer in the last couple of years that they're literally less than 5 yards from the tree, and I'm 36 feet in a tree. People will argue that that's not an ethical shot. Almost all of them shoot them right through the spine, down through the lungs, and into the heart. Like, you have to know where the heart's at. So if you're going to do that, you have to understand the anatomy of the deer. We both do, because we butcher a lot of deer. I mean, I've probably butchered 75 or 80 deer in the last 10 years.
You got to practice it too, though. We're out here shooting off your roof or off your second floor here.
We shoot off out of the window in my bedroom with the compound bows. We shoot with the recurve bows. We practice that. If you're not going to practice that skill, don't do it. I'm telling you, right? Just because it'll be nothing but heartbreak.
Yep.
Don't do it unless you practice it. That's another great tip is, look, you need to be using a 3D target. If you're not using a 3D target, find a good reason why you're not, and go buy one. It's going to help you in the long run. Yeah. Set it up at different angles. Don't ever shoot it. If you just shoot it at broadside, it's not going to do any good. You got to shoot at it from all different angles. Shoot at it quarter and two, shoot it quarter and away. Whatever you got to do to make sure that you understand where that arrow needs to go, so that it goes through 2 lungs and a heart, or at least 2 lungs, or at least a heart. You say hunt higher, you say hunt lower. This is one of the tactics I think I really want to get into early season next year. I've got a couple of spots. It's almost like hunting, out west somewhere, like North Dakota, South Dakota, where you have very few trees. You've got hundreds of acres of just grass and thickets and just CRP-like stuff. And I learned a lot this year from hunting the buck that I killed this year. There's a lot of times that these deer spend all day in that really, really tall grass, and they're not in the woods. Like, they're hundreds and hundreds of yards from a tree. And we're going to get into the ground tactics next year. I sat on a hill this year more mornings. I probably scouted more this year than I hunted. And I know that's hard to believe. I probably have 70 sits, but I spent so much time scouting this year. I would sit on a hill high up on a mountain, and I would just watch these fields, and I would see where deer are going, where they're crossing roads, how they're going through ditches, where they're hiding out during the day. And at 10 o'clock in the afternoon, you've got a deer moving through a low spot in a big field where nobody else in the world can see him except for you, and you're in this spot. And then you know where you can go to sit up on them. And if there's a little bush down there, you can get a small ground blind behind. If there's maybe a small tree that you can hang in, and I'm not talking about hanging in it, like you might only be 4 or 5 feet off the ground, but you're just using it so that you're high enough to see the antlers coming through the grass. That's it. So those are some tactics that I'm going to try to employ next year early season, and you're going to be right along with me with running a camera, or I'll be running a camera while you're filming, but or while you're shooting, we're talking some really good opportunities to kill some quality bucks, and I can't wait for that. I'm kind of bummed I'm tagged out in Pennsylvania right now because I'd be after it.
Well, so let's circle back to what you said. It resonated with me. Following the deer and just scouting, right? Like, so you said specifically, you scouted more than you hunted. And I think that's something that, especially late season, everybody can employ, because the deer seem to group up. Like, when you get on the deer, you're on the deer. You're on 10 to 20 of them, right? Like, it's not like early season, you'll see those onesie twosies a lot. And like late season, it seems like they just pile up. So if you're not moving until you find them, it can be a little rough.
Yeah, you got to stay mobile. I think you got on me last year hard. Like, you were hard on me. Midsummer, you're like, yo, you haven't hung a trail camera? I'm like, no, man, I just wasn't into it. Man, how are you going to see some deer? You're not scouting. I'm like, dude, listen, I have 13,942 points on Onyx from 7 different counties here and 2 other states, and I'm not saying that the data is always going to be the same, but a lot of big bucks, a lot of mature bucks, they're going to do the same thing from year to year. So if you've got a scrape that a buck worked, if you've got a trail camera photo from a buck last year, and you know that in February you have pictures of him, chances are if he worked that scrape on the 27th of October, he's going to work that scrape 27th of October the following year, or within a day or 2 of that. It's just the way it is. These guys are like clocks, especially the big old mature bucks. They know when certain does come in, they're going to get up and they're going to go look for those does, and it's, I'm telling you, their brain is like a calendar. I've got a neighbor here that has 4 acres of land right behind my house. He shot a giant, it's probably 115-inch 7-point.
Well,
it's an absolute giant buck. 4 days ago, in the middle of the night, he's got, at 2:30 in the morning, he's got an 8-point out here. It's probably all of 145 inches. And I live in an urban area. I mean, I got 37 houses out here just on the side of the road that I'm on, and another 64 houses on the other side. A major highway right down here within 300 yards. I mean, I'm in an urban area. And then my buddy up the hill, 2 miles up the hill, he's got I don't know. He's got what, 87 acres, 88, I don't know. Something crazy.
I don't know. We
It's under 100. We don't know. I mean, Onyx will tell you it's 87 acres, but he makes it bigger, he makes it smaller. But they've been hunting up there for, the entire length that the family's owned the property, and I think the biggest buck that's ever been shot up there was shot last year, and it's probably 116, 18-inch buck. I mean, it's a great buck for Pennsylvania. And his dad's killed 21 bucks in a row, 21 years consistent, but the biggest one that's ever come off of there is still sub 120. And there's a 140-inch deer down here running right behind my neighbor's house. So again, you've got to follow the deer. You've got to scout them out. You've got to figure out where they're at and what they're doing. Hunting a fresh sign, if there's fresh deer droppings on the ground, they seem wet and it hasn't rained in 3 days and it's windy, they're fresh because the leaves will bury that stuff real quick. This time of year, you got to be looking, where are they running? The leaves are going to be pounded down. I mean, they're not going to, it's not going to be a dirt trail or anything, but you're going to see a little impression in the leaves where they're running. You're going to see where they're browsing on whatever
greenbrier eating all.
Well, it's either greenbriers or whatever they're eating. If you're looking at the plants that are knee high, and you're seeing the tops chewed off, you've got deer in there. And if they're all brown and haven't been munched on in a couple of days, you'll know that. But if they're super fresh and green, you're like, man, there was a deer in here yesterday. So you got to pay attention to that stuff. The little details, man. It's all about the little details.
Yeah.
What else you got?
I think that's all I got. I think that's all I got. I mean, just keep moving until you find it. That's gotta be the biggest thing. This applies to like every season we do. But I would so much rather keep walking and bump a deer and then come in and hunt it another day. You could probably hunt it the same day. A lot of times they'll just circle downwind and come back to see if it's safe, you know. But
the whole idea is don't waste a sit.
Right? Like,
when I was a younger guy, like I hunted hard when I was a kid, and I took about 10 years off, and then I got back into it. But I can remember when I got back into it, I'd go into a spot and I was like, wow, this looks good. I mean, there's some oak trees here, it's nice and open, and I'm going to climb a tree and I'm going to sit. And I had no reason to sit there. No reason whatsoever. It's not like I saw sign or I saw rubs or I saw scrapes. It's just like, I'm just going hunting. With that scenario, you're playing the lottery. I mean, you're just trying to get lucky.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there's probably no deer moving through there.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to go find those spots where, nobody else has been. We kill a lot of deer less than 100 yards from a road.
Yeah.
How many deer this year you killed less than 100 yards from the road?
I mean, like straight line distance, all of them in Maryland. It doesn't necessarily work out like that with the property lines, but they're all about 100, maybe 200. Yeah, I mean, most of them within 100 yards of the road, to be honest.
In the last 5 years, I know I've killed 10 deer that I've watched come down and cross a road from a non-huntable piece of property or a non-public piece of property onto a piece of property that I have either permission to hunt or it's public. Like I don't hunt too many permission places, but it's either public or it's a military reserve or something like that where you can register and hunt. And I've watched deer cross the road, walk another 70 yards right under my tree, and get a great shot. So this idea that you've got to go 7 miles back into the brush to try to hunt deer, it's crazy. If you're just out there trying to harvest a doe, which I hope you are. I mean, Pennsylvania just published an article the other day. They want every hunter out there to shoot another deer. Well, I'm telling them, give me another tag, right?
Give me 5 more tags.
Throw me another tag and I'll shoot another deer. Like I love driving to Maryland to hunt, but I'd rather do it in Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would rather do it in Pennsylvania. I love hunting up here. I like hunting Maryland.
I just hate the drive. I mean, I'd love to stay down there for a week. I just hate the drive. Getting up at 3 o'clock. This is where you find out.
Like we're an hour and 40
dedicated.
minutes away.
Yep. That's how you find out how dedicated you are. You're up at 3. You're leaving the house at 3 a.m.
Yeah, you're out of bed.
Otherwise, you're late.
Yeah.
I mean,
2:30.
Yeah, it's
this time of year you might get away with it. I mean, if you're like really close to the
clock
bed,
set back a little, and
but
it's
hard.
It's rough. Yeah.
Anything else late season? Shoot your bows, man. If you're not still shooting your bow, and I know we're crazy. We're crazy because what was it, last week we were out in the back porch and we're shooting at a target that's 70 yards away. It's 11:30 at night and we're not using any lights. I mean, we put the pin sight on, like there's a little bit of light in the pin, but other than that, we're just shooting at what we think is the silhouette of a target at 70 yards. We didn't hit it, but when we moved into 40 yards, we were bang on. Like in the dark, no lights. Like hitting a target, it's 40 yards.
I don't know if they were kill shots, not all of them. You had some really good shots.
Yeah, when you move into like 25 or 30 yards, I mean, if you can't kill a deer like that, I mean, you need to practice more. It's just practice. And I'm telling you, I made a bad shot last Thursday. I made a horrible shot.
It happens.
Again, there was a lot of stuff going on. That deer was super cagey. She knew I was there. She took a step just as I'm shooting. Just a lot of bad stuff. And 47-yard shot this time of year when a deer knows you're there.
Oh yeah, let's bring that up for a second, right? Like this is another really good point: is learning how to read deer.
You gotta read them, man.
Because late season, like it seems like almost all the time when they come out, they are cagey. Especially in an area like where we hunt up in Pennsylvania here, it is highly pressured. And every time, if one of these does comes out and you're trying to take a 40-yard shot, they're going to duck your arrow. I had them break my heart last year. These mature does, I watched a mature doe duck. She hit the ground. Just arrow went right over the back.
So did the one last Thursday.
I mean, they come out and they are just on edge because they've been after, hunters have been after them for months now. To literally 2 months now,
Yeah.
So I would almost refrain from taking a 50-yard shot or a 40-yard shot unless that deer is completely clueless, and you can tell that it's clueless that you're there.
Yeah, and I thought she was. And then if every time you video something, you have the opportunity to go back and watch it. And I'll never tell anybody, hey, video your hunts, because if you're not shooting deer now, don't take a camera to the woods. That's the worst thing you could ever do. You're just going to you're going to compound your problem. Like once you can shoot 10 deer a year in a month and a half long season, and you're confident in that, like once you can do that, then take a camera, because then you'll challenge yourself. It'll be a little bit harder, and things will be good. Mm-hmm. But if you're trying to shoot deer on film late season, the beauty of it is I can watch the film back, and this is one of the reasons we recovered her too, because I hit her way back, way low. I mean, basically the small intestines were falling out of her, and I know it's like whatever. You can watch the video on the channel; it's there. If you zoom in, you watch the small intestines fall out underneath. She was cagey. I mean, she come in, she looked up at a branch, she kind of nosed the branch, but when she did that, she looked back at me, and I'm only like 8 feet off the ground, 10 feet off the ground in a tree, but I'm also 14 or 15 feet up off a creek bottom on a steep bank. I almost couldn't stand to get into that tree, but I knew where the deer were bedded, and I couldn't walk much further without spooking them. And I hunted the opposite side from the ground the day before, and they'd come out right under this tree. So I thought they're going to do the same. But today the wind was that day the wind was a little bit different, and they decided to come right down through the creek bottom, or just off to the left of it. And I'm telling, man, they just started piling out of this little bedding area, and before I know it, I'm covered in deer. And they just seem like they all want to skirt that 47, 48 yard mark and then kind of go down along. And I'm looking over here, and if I'd have missed the deer by too much, I'd have hit my Jeep. Because that's, my Jeep's only parked about 75 yards away. Mm-hmm. But I mean, we hunt a lot of these tiny little strips where, deer are funneled into, small spots. Like we put ourselves in high productivity type spots. That's why we killed, 12 deer a year, 11, 12 deer a year.
That's why we have a sit where we don't see deer. There's something wrong.
But most guys, they'd be driving down the road, they'd see that fluorescent orange in a tree, and they'd be like, what the heck's that guy sitting there for? Mm-hmm. Well, guess what, dude? I'm loading the truck up with deer. That's what I'm doing. So, and again, late season, whatever your tactics are, I think the last thing I'll let you with is, don't let what other hunters say impact what you're doing. If you think what you're doing is right and you're having success at it, keep plugging away at it. I've had guys literally park on the side of the road, get out of the car, take a leak, and then drive off right at the intersection of where I have a deer trail coming across, and then later on that evening have a deer come out of the woods from a cemetery and cross the road and come right down to the tree and get stuffed with an arrow. So don't let the haters impact what you're doing. Do you, and have fun at it.
Yeah, I agree.
Pour yourself a drink, bro. You didn't even eat your chili, bro.
I ate some of it.
Not enough. What do we got here today?
We got the Benchmark.
Benchmark.
It's a Buffalo Trace product. I believe it's the same mash bill as Buffalo Trace, except this one is a barrel proof. I'm a pretty big whiskey guy. I know you enjoy whiskey. We'll kill half a bottle over here like it's nothing. So
yeah, we did.
Yeah, I mean it's solid for a $25 pour. I mean can't get it in Pennsylvania, but it's a solid pour if you can get out of state. So yeah.
Well, we want to leave everybody with a question, right? What's the question? We talked like, what's your favorite broadhead? Like, what's your favorite camo? What do you want to do?
Something
controversial.
We gotta go super controversial with it.
By the way, 4%, according to the Pennsylvania Game Commission, 4% of the hunters kill 24% of the deer in Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. I texted him a picture of this stuff when they wrote the article, and he's like, yeah, that's us. Sure is, buddy. Sure is. Anyhow, we got a couple of buck's head, the taxidermists, that still have to go on the wall, and then you got a couple at your place we got to put up. And
we got a couple more that are still walking around in Maryland.
We got a couple in Maryland we got to shoot,
But overall, I mean, I think the best part is about late season is like, especially for guys like you and me, like we've killed a bunch of deer. This is a great time for us to kind of experiment. We can see what we can get away with, have some fun with it, but then just continue the season. Like I'm not ready for it to be over. If you live all your year for that 2 weeks out of the year where you have the rut, like, man, I almost feel bad for you because, like, there's so much season. February 4th will be the last day, and that's assuming we don't buy Virginia hunting licenses at this point, and that's not a guarantee.
Man, I love Virginia. I love Virginia. Some big bucks are coming out of Virginia too, but we need a question.
Yeah.
So if you watched all this way, if you like the content, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. We appreciate it greatly. I don't care about your likes, man. We don't need the likes.
I care about the likes.
But what I want you to do, put some stuff in the comments. Share the video with your friends. And I think the question is, like, what's your favorite broadhead? And I'm not talking just fixed blade, cut on contact. Like, what's your favorite broadhead? Put it in the contact or put it in the comments, and let's have a discussion about it. Because I have mine, and I think after this year, he has his too.
I do, yeah.
But I will let you know that I had a broadhead that I shot through 4 deer. Then I gave him the broadhead as a practice tip to use to see if he liked those broadheads. And this is an expandable. We're not going to let the brand out of the bag, maybe on the next episode. But he put that broadhead through his...
I remember
that would have been, it was your 5th deer total.
Yeah.
And it was the 5th deer that it went through.
Yeah.
So I think that's really cool. We're not going to talk about what we'll let you know. But I want to see. I want to see what your favorite broadhead is in the comments. Doesn't matter, fixed blade, cut on contact, expand, whatever. Just put it down there. Let us know what it is, and let me know why. I want to know why.
Yeah.
All right, dude.
Cool.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having me. You set up the whole studio for me. Appreciate you.